On this 11th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, President Obama and the First Lady observed a moment of silence over at the White House. Later, the president attended a memorial service at the Pentagon and visited with wounded warriors over at Walter Reed Hospital. Since the president took office, the U.S. dramatically increased its use of unmanned aircraft to target and kill militants and terrorists. Yet he almost never talks about these drone attacks. For her CNN documentary, Obama Revealed, our chief White House correspondent Jessica Yellen asked him about the process of choosing targets. It's a sensitive subject, as we all know, Jessica.
It is, Wolf. And, you know, the use of drones has increased fourfold since President Obama took office. Now, published reports say the president personally approves of the so-called kill list, those targeted for death. I asked the president in an interview about this and more.
Do you personally decide who is targeted, and what are your criteria, if you do, for the use of lethal force?
Well, I've got to be a little careful here. You know, they're classified issues. My first job, my most sacred duty as President and Commander-in-Chief is to keep the American people safe. And what that means is we've brought a whole bunch of tools to bear to go after al-Qaeda and those who would attack Americans. You know, drones are one tool that we use, and our criteria for using them is very tight and very strict. It has to be a target that is authorized by our laws. It has to be a threat that is serious and not speculative. It has to be a situation in which we can't capture the individual before they move forward on some sort of operational plot against the United States. And we've got to make sure that in whatever operations we conduct, you know, we are very careful about avoiding civilian casualties. Obviously, as president, ultimately I'm responsible for decisions that are made by the administration. But I think what the American people need to know is the seriousness with which we take both the responsibility to keep them safe, but also the seriousness with which we take the need for us to abide by our traditions of rule of law and due process.
Sir, do you personally approve the targets?
Hey, you know, I can't get too deeply into you know, how these things work, but as I said, as Commander-in-Chief, ultimately, you know, I am responsible for the process that we've set up.
Do you struggle with this policy?
Oh, absolutely. That's something that you have to struggle with. Our most powerful tool over the long term to reduce the terrorist threat is to live up to our values and to be able to shape public opinion, not just here but around the world, that senseless violence is not a way to resolve political differences. And so it's very important for the president and the entire culture of our national security team to continually ask tough questions about, are we doing the right thing? Are we abiding by rule of law? Are we abiding by due process? And then set up structures and institutional checks so that you know, you avoid any kind of slippery slope into a place where we're not being true to who we are.
Now, some human rights advocates say this practice amounts to targeted assassination. They especially take issue with the fact that a drone strike killed Yemeni cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, who was a U.S. citizen. You can hear how the president explains the rationale for targeting a U.S. citizen when Obama Revealed. The documentary re-airs this Saturday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern.
Another encore edition, an excellent documentary. It wasn't just Anwar al-Awlaki who was killed in one of these drones. His, 16-year-old son, who was also an American, said he was killed as well. So that obviously weighs heavily on the minds of the president.
That's right. 2 American citizens killed in Yemen in 2 drone strikes. And the president says these are there is a rationale for it, and he did not say he especially struggles with that any more than with any other drone strike, but he explains why U.S. citizens can be killed.
Because sometimes some of the human rights activists complain that they're being killed without due process. if you will.
Right. That is true of all these people who end up getting targeted. That's the criticism these human rights advocates level.
Good work.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jessica Yellen. CNN's Nick Robertson also doing good work. He spoke exclusively with the brother of the top man in Al-Qaeda, and he says there is a path to reconciliation and peace. But will any Western leader ever agree to the terms?